Lawful money redemption and elastic currency claims under the Federal Reserve Act. 1. Executive overview. You examine the claim that the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 embeds a remedy allowing you to redeem Federal Reserve notes in lawful money, and you compare that claim with the text, history, and subsequent codification in Title 12 Section 411, the constitutional treatment of money, and modern case law on legal tender. You also situate the Act's stated aim to furnish an elastic currency alongside assertions that redemption today can alter tax or banking obligations. Footnote. This overview frames the legal questions you must analyze before relying on redemption language for present-day transactions. 2. Statutory framing and elastic currency. You start with the Act's purposes, including the goal to furnish an elastic currency and to afford means of rediscounting commercial paper, and you note that Section 16 originally referenced redemption at the Treasury and at Federal Reserve banks, later carried forward in Title 12 Section 411. You distinguish the policy of elasticity, which permits expansion and contraction of note supply, from any claim that elasticity alone creates a private right to metal redemption today. Footnote. This section explains how the Act's elasticity objective differs from a personal entitlement to gold or silver on demand. 3. Saving to suitors and common law remedy. You read the Saving to Suitors clause in the Judiciary Act of 1789 and you recognize it preserves certain common law remedies in admiralty-related contexts, not a universal bypass of federal statutes governing currency. You therefore avoid stretching that clause to create a redemption pathway broader than the statutes and regulations that govern federal obligations and legal tender in civilian commerce. Footnote. This section cautions you against treating the Saving to Suitors clause as a general license to override money statutes. 4. Constitutional baselines and legal tender. You parse two anchors in Article 1, which disable states from making anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts while empowering Congress to coin money and regulate its value. You then note that after the war between the states the Supreme Court upheld national legal tender authority in the legal tender decisions, confirming that notes designated by Congress as legal tender may discharge debts even absent metal redemption. Footnote. This section shows you that federal legal tender status rests on congressional power, not on a requirement to redeem in specie. 5. United States notes and inelastic currency. You differentiate United States notes, historically capped and characterized as inelastic, from Federal Reserve notes designed for elasticity, and you observe that Congress later ceased issuing additional United States notes without repealing their status. You do not infer from this history that present circulation rules compel banks to treat personal endorsements as conversion of elastic notes into inelastic instruments. Footnote. This section clarifies that the inelastic nature of United States notes does not convert routine deposits into that class by wording alone. 6. Emergency measures and bank holidays. You consider emergency orders in the early 1930s, including the bank holiday under executive authority, and later continuity statutes that preserve tools for crisis response. You understand these measures as contingent powers for liquidity stress and systemic risk, not as standing proof that private redemption demands today must be honored in metal or that a bank must ignore modern payment system rules. Footnote. This section places emergency powers in their proper role as crisis tools rather than everyday redemption guarantees. 7. Modern meaning of lawful money under Title 12 Section 411. You read that Federal Reserve notes shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury or a Federal Reserve Bank, and you interpret lawful money in current law to include legal tender forms authorized by Congress, not a right to gold or silver for the bearer. You also note federal security protocols and access limits, so you avoid assuming that lobby demands or teller endorsements can compel a different instrumentality than permitted channels. Footnote. This section guides you to read lawful money through current statutes and holdings rather than through historic specie practices. 8. Endorsement legends, tax ideas, and penalty risk. You evaluate claims that writing redeem and lawful money above your signature on instruments changes income character or shields deposits from levy, and you compare those claims with published penalty regimes for frivolous positions. You treat such legends as legally ineffective to alter gross income rules or reporting duties, and you account for potential $5,000 penalties and other sanctions for positions without valid grounding. Footnote: this section warns you that endorsement wording does not reclassify income and may expose you to penalties. 9. Debt discharge, ownership concepts, and liens. You distinguish between paying a price and discharging a debt, and you avoid assuming that using bank credit leaves every asset under a perpetual first lien by the government, or that a property becomes allodial by wording on checks. You verify actual lien status through recorded instruments and governing contracts rather than through theories that treat every bank deposit as pledged collateral by default. Footnote: this section directs you to rely on recorded liens and contracts, not on broad claims about perpetual encumbrances. 10. Courts, precedent, and practical process. You read modern appellate language stating that a holder may be entitled to redeem a note but not in precious metal, and you reconcile that with the lawful money clause by recognizing the contemporary scope of redemption. You also appreciate that banking compliance, anti-money laundering duties, and treasury procedures govern how redemption or exchange occurs, and you do not rely on anecdotal notary practices as legal authority. Footnote: this section emphasizes that you must follow contemporary procedures and precedent rather than informal teller-level workarounds. 11. Research checklist for responsible application. You assemble the text of Title 12 Section 411, the Federal Reserve Act Section 16 History, Title 31 Provisions on United States Notes, relevant emergency statutes, and modern legal tender decisions, and you verify each proposition against primary sources. You consult qualified counsel before using non-standard endorsements or positions that could affect tax, banking access, or compliance exposure. Footnote: this section equips you to ground any reliance on redemption language in verified sources and competent advice. 12. Conclusion. You conclude that the Act's elasticity aim and the lawful money clause exist within a framework that vests Congress with broad monetary power, defines legal tender, and channels redemption through present instruments and procedures, not through ad hoc demands for specie or tax recharacterization. You proceed by evidence, respect for statute, and awareness of penalty regimes that attach to unsupported claims. Footnote: this section summarizes why you should align practice with current law rather than with contested redemption theories.